The next one is titled Circumcision Regrets. My boy is 10.5 months. Circumcision wasn't really a debate between my husband and I, but just something that we expected to have done. Lately, I've been having some regrets on doing this because I've seen it lately as a pretty archaic practice. Like, who are we to mutilate our child's body because of societal standards? I know there's no going back, but feeling some strong regrets in making this decision for him. Anyone else? Now, I am not pro-circumcision. I would never choose to circumcise my child. And I fundamentally believe that you should not be making permanent alterations to your child's body unless they are medically necessary for, and by medically necessary, I do mean actually literally medically necessary. We think it would be better for his mental health or something along those lines. So that's just so you know my angle coming at this. I think... I mean, yes, obviously there's no going back. Like, once you've made a decision, you have to stick with it. But what makes me really sad about this particular decision is this idea that it's just something we just expected to have done. We did not take the time to properly think about it or to do research or to understand whether we wanted to do it or not. Like, I understand the people who at least look into it and then they still decide to do it anyway. I have a lot more respect for that style of parenting than I do for the people who just do things without considering them. Especially when those things have long-term consequences for your child and their health. And obviously there are some circumcisions that go wrong. And I can only imagine the pain and the regret that a parent must have if a circumcision goes wrong. And then at the end of it, you're kind of like, yeah, well, I'm not sure why we even decided to do that. That's pretty horrifying to me as a situation that could impact some people. So fundamentally, I think it is one of those things that, at the very least, as a parent, you should take the right that you have over your child's body and the right that you have to make decisions for them pretty seriously. And treat it as seriously as you can. Try to make the best decisions that you can, and not be this kind of lighthearted, just inconsiderate person who just makes decisions on the spot without thinking about them too hard. Now, I understand that quite a lot of parenting happens a little bit instinctively, I guess, for a lot of people. For example, when it comes to food and what they feed their kids, you just kind of feed them whatever you have available. And that's not necessarily, I kind of do think that that's a problem. I think you should consider every physical decision that you're making for your child, and you should take it pretty seriously. And that starts from the moment that they're born. When it comes to feeding, it includes things like circumcision, it includes things like ear piercings, it includes things like vaccines. Like, every single decision that you have to decide, where you can change what you can, I guess, put something inside your child's body, or take something from your child, especially if it can impact them permanently. Now, I'm not talking about giving them particular medicines, for example. If you say, hey, it's just if it's a one-time thing, even if it is somewhat poisonous for them, their body will likely flush it out and get rid of it. But anything that really has the potential to impact them permanently is a pretty big deal. And it makes me kind of sad that people don't treat it that way, because I guess as a parent, you have so many decisions that you should be making, that's kind of the standard. I guess you just make the decisions and move on with your life. Now, you can see here some I also fundamentally disagree with pretty much everything that the people here say. I'll give you a couple of examples. So this person says, I refuse to discuss my son's genitals online, so I can't come from a place of relatability. My advice is to speak to your son's pediatrician about why you regret the procedure and how you can handle your concerns as he grows. You definitely can't uncircumcise, but I'm sure there's interventions along the way that can help you with your concerns. And then someone kind of calls her out on this. She says, yeah, but doctors do it as standard anyway. And she says, I'm not having the circumcision discussion. Different people have different beliefs when it comes to this. So that's where I stand. She made a decision. She no longer likes that decision, but there's nothing that can be done. So the only thing to do is to move forward with the consequence of the decision and attempt intervention as it comes necessary. And she's fundamentally right. Like, once you've made the decision, you can't undo it. So you have to somehow come to terms with it and move on. But I think that if you do end up in this situation where you make a decision and then you regret it, that you should kind of sit there and think about that for a good long while. And the main question that you need to be able to answer is, what was it? Like, what happened? What did I do wrong that I ended up making this decision too quickly, without thinking it through, without understanding what the potential consequences of it are. Like, what was my mindset at the time that I made this decision? And how can I ensure that as a parent, I will not be in that same situation again at some point in the future where I make another decision and then afterwards I'm like, man, that was a really dumb decision. Why did I do that? So I think that you have, like, you owe yourself and you owe your son, at the very least, that learning experience. You owe it to yourself that when you move on, you don't simply go, oh, well, I can't do anything about it now, so it doesn't really matter, but that you actually sit there and go, okay, this feeling of regret is trying to teach me something. What is it trying to teach me? And for your son, whose body was changed, you need to be able to, at some point in his life, if I guess a lot of guys don't maybe have the question or think about it too hard, but I would expect that if I were to make a decision like that for my son, I'd be able to sit down and explain to him at some point when he's older why I decided to do it. And I think I should be able to do that with every decision that I make for him. And if the answer is, it was a mistake, it was a dumb decision, I didn't mean to, I just didn't think about it hard enough, and there were some arguments for and against it that I hadn't fully considered, then that is what I have to be able to say to my child. So I think it's fundamentally important. It's not like one of those things where you're like, yeah, nothing can be done about it, so I should just move on. But you should actually take it pretty seriously and do a lot of self-reflection on the tail end of that. Next one says, I've seen quite a lot of parents with regrets online in regards to this, parents who made the decision to circumcise their first son and not subsequent ones after learning more about it. Many people still consider it to be the norm and don't research it beforehand. You're not alone. You can't go back, but you could make a different choice if you have future sons. And then everyone just spends a lot of time trying to kind of comfort her. Here's a perfect example of that. She says, it might have been one of the first decisions that you made that you regretted, but it won't be the last. Welcome to parenthood. We make choices every day. And as we grow and change, we sometimes come to believe that the choices we made previously were wrong and sometimes even downright harmful. Some of those choices are permanent. Give yourself grace and move forward. I mean, I agree that you can't sit there, like, once you've made a decision and you feel like you messed up, you can't just sit there and, again, self-flagellate the whole time and be like, oh man, I'm the worst person ever. I'm the most terrible parent to ever exist in the whole world. And what have I done? And yes, okay, fair enough. You do not need to be completely over the top. You don't need to get super emotional about it, but you should learn from it. You really, really should. And I think that as a parent, you have a responsibility and a duty towards your child to try and raise them in the best possible way that you can. And part of raising them in the best possible way that you can is that when you make mistakes, you actually learn from them. So no, I think my primary advice to OP would be like, okay, maybe actually sit down and reflect on this. Why did you make that decision, really? And are there any other decisions that you are making right now for your child that you haven't properly thought through, that you haven't researched, that you don't understand? Because that's the only way that you can really say that you've learned from this as an experience. Here's an example, another example of a comment. I know that once your outlook on this issue has shifted, it can be hard to understand what you were thinking before your son was born. You need to remember that you always wanted the best for your son, and that's exactly why you chose to circumcise. It's very likely that the majority of your social circle made the same decision. More importantly, our medical system encourages it and subsidizes it. It can be very hard to swim against that tide, especially as young or first-time parents. There are so many other decisions to make when you're pregnant, and often there's no reason to think that this issue deserves special attention over all of the other things that you're dealing with. The first thing to do is forgive yourself and promise to do the right thing if you have another son in the future. Live and learn. Next, even though it is tempting to try and put this behind you, I think it's important to try and make a difference so that other parents don't make the same mistake. This does not have to be a big thing. Without being judgmental, you can share your regret with other people in your life who are pregnant. You can share your story on sites like this. You can make a small financial contribution to organizations like Intact America or Your Whole Baby, which are trying to raise awareness and lobby for change. It can be very cathartic when you feel like you may have helped another family. Now, I like most of what she says here, and I think most of what she says is true and is right. And the learning of maybe try to speak up about your experience and what you've learned from this, so that maybe you can encourage other people to reconsider it before they decide to do it. But I really hate everything that she uses to kind of excuse it. So everything from, you wanted the best for your child, so it's okay. It's likely that the majority of your social circle made the same decision. The medical system encourages it, so it's hard to swim against the tide. I honestly really believe that you are doing your child a disservice when you make decisions for them on the basis of, well, everyone else is doing this, so it can't be that bad. I don't think that this is good. I think that you should always have a certain amount of critical thought and just a critical mind, because ultimately you're not even making a decision that will just impact you. It will impact your baby. And for as long as your baby doesn't get a say, then you have to be careful as a parent. Now, obviously, I'm being a bit mean here because maybe because it's a circumcision topic and I'm quite touchy about that one. But no, I fundamentally think that if you screw up in a permanent way in front of your kids, then you have to really, really contend with that. And contending with that does not mean just going, oh, well, it's done now, I can't do anything about it. Contending with that really, really means understanding why you did that, how you did that, and how you can stop yourself from doing it again. I think this is very fundamental in terms of just my image of an aspiration towards what being a good parent should look like.